Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about my most worn fragrances of 2023, and I'm a geek, so I keep records of every fragrance I wear throughout the year. I have an Excel spreadsheet. I used to have a paper perfume diary, but I've gone online. So this really is my actual most worn fragrances of 2023. I'm Claire Smith. I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology even. I also just do some straight perfume reviews. So if you haven't already seen me before and if you haven't already subscribed, then please do consider doing so. And also please like this video if you do end up liking this video. So there's going to be a little bit of a caveat to this video because I'm not going to talk about anything that I've finished a bottle of. I talk about all of my fragrance empties in empties videos, and I wear quite a lot of empties this year because I just had a lot of very old fragrances that I'd been hanging on to the last dregs of. So I did finish quite a few this year. But if you want to hear about those, you can look at my fragrance empties videos, which I will link down below. So let's get on with this. What was my most worn fragrance in January? So my most worn fragrance in January 2023 was Azzaro's Wanted Girl by Night. So this fragrance I was sent by a subscriber back in December 2022. And Melanie sent me this one because she'd heard that I really wanted to try it. And honestly, I looked absolutely everywhere to try and find this fragrance, and I just couldn't find it anywhere for sale in the UK. I'd heard loads of US YouTubers talking about this one, so I was really curious to try it. So Melanie said she'd send me a sample, and she ended up sending me her entire bottle of this fragrance, which was lovely of her. And when she sent me this fragrance, I think it was about half full. Now it's down to about here, so there's probably about a quarter left maybe. I really can't see this fragrance making it into 2025. I just find this one addictive, and I really love wearing this in the cold weather. I've begun to reach for this again in January, and I was reaching for it back in December too. I think this fragrance is really addictive, and there's something about this that gets compliments. It's the same with Wanted Girl. That one I didn't like as much as this one, but I got loads of compliments with Wanted Girl as well. I think it's the sweetness and the stickiness. So if you haven't smelt this, this smells like US Concord, purple grapes, that kind of sticky sweet smell that they put in sweets in the US. My brother lives in the US, so I do have experience of eating US candies, I guess is what they're called. But in the UK, you call them sweets. And it just is one of those sort of sticky sweet, boiled sweets kind of fragrances. You just smell edible. And I guess that's why it's so loved, isn't it? But yeah, I think this one would be perfect for a night out. It's really long lasting as well. You don't need many sprays, 3 or 4, 5 sprays. You can still smell this 12 hours later, and it's just absolutely delicious. I can't get enough of this one. So that's Wanted Girl by Night by Azzaro. So my most worn fragrance in February is one that's from probably my favourite line of fragrances that I've tried so far out of all the fragrances that I've tried in 3.5 years. And that's saying something, isn't it? Because I just think this line is just really good value for how good it is and how interesting it is and how delicious it is. So this is from the Les Notes Gourmandes line from Reminiscence, and this one is called Guimauve. So Guimauve I bought back in 2022, and I bought this because I became completely obsessed with heliotrope from this line. And after buying Guimauve and becoming obsessed with this one, I bought Dragé. I think out of the three, Guimauve is the hardest to like, and it's the one that I think is the longest lasting and the strongest out of the three. This one is clearly supposed to be marshmallow because Guimauve translates as marshmallow, but I would say the marshmallow is only really in the dry down, and it's something you have to wait for. I think if you're expecting a Killian's Love Don't Be Shy, or if you're expecting a Memo Sintra kind of situation, maybe in the dry down, but not until then. And I wouldn't say this is ever a clone or a dupe. It's not that at all. It's just got sort of echoes of those fragrances really. I guess it's the marshmallowiness, isn't it? So this one opens with some herbalness, even some soapiness, some citrus. But actually in the dry down, you're left with the citrus along with some creamy almond and then that marshmallowy, powdery vanilla. It's truly delicious in the dry down, and it's something as well that I like because it doesn't smell like straight up food. It's something that has other aspects to it. It's a floral gourmand fragrance, I think, really in the main. So yeah, I think this fragrance is just great for the money. I think you can get it for about 35, 40 pounds, I think is how much a 100ml bottle is, which I think is a complete bargain. So that's Guimauve from Les Notes Gourmandes from Reminiscence. So in March, I was enjoying the fragrances that I've been either gifted for my birthday or that I bought myself for my birthday. And I was gifted Kayali's Lovefest, so I wore that a few times when I went out. And I was also enjoying wearing Velvet Orchid by Tom Ford, which is a fragrance that I bought for myself for my birthday, which is something that I don't normally do. I don't normally buy myself gifts, but I just had been wanting that fragrance for ages and I needed an excuse to buy it, so I bought it for my birthday. But actually, my most worn during March has really surprised me, actually. But I get it because I did really enjoy wearing this one, and I do think it's an amazing fragrance. And this one is Etui Noir by Miller Harris. So this one actually translates as black needle case or dark needle case. And needle cases, I guess, were traditionally made of a very rough suede. And I guess this fragrance is really completely that. It's a rough suede. It's a powdery, irisy, kind of makeup-y suede in the beginning, but it dries down as quite a leathery fragrance. It becomes darker, it becomes woodier. You also get some incense. It's a little bit citrusy. It's just a really interesting fragrance, and it really makes me think of like meeting someone in a pub next to a fireplace or something like that with a nice kind of cracked old leather sofa and just enjoying a pint with someone. It's a very kind of friendly leather fragrance. I think some leathers just smell very harsh and almost artificial and they're just not very good. This is a really lovely, soft, pliable, really, huggy kind of leather with that sort of powdery aspect of it and that sort of more suedey side of leather as well at the beginning. I just really like this one. It's really long lasting and it's deceptively strong as well, this one. You don't want many sprays of this because it can be very, very big and overwhelming in a way. But as nice as it is, it can be a little bit overwhelming because it is just really strong. But yeah, a beautiful fragrance, and I will in a heartbeat repurchase this one if I ever use up this bottle because it's gorgeous. So that's Etui Noir by Miller Harris. So in April, I was continuing my leather obsession and I made an entire video about leather in fragrances and really about the history of how perfume developed from the leather industry, really. So I'm going to leave that link down below in case you haven't seen it. But this fragrance featured in that video. So this is Encens Celeste by Atelier Cologne. So this fragrance, I don't think anybody really spoke about this one. I really feel like it passed without any kind of fanfare. I don't think this was a popular fragrance, but there was just something about this that made me want to try it. And I think this fragrance really filled a hole in my collection because it's a deeper, darker leather, but it's not so strong that it makes it unwearable, because I don't really think that I would really like a really, really strong leather on me. This is a citrusy, incensey, but yeah, greener leather, I would say. I just really like this one. It's really suitable for springtime as well. It's not so heavy. And yeah, I've enjoyed it. I kind of get why it's not been popular because it's not a beast mode fragrance. And I think that's what people want, isn't it? It's something that really lasts and is really strong. And that's not what this is. So that's Atelier Cologne's Encens Celeste. So in May, my most worn fragrance is really one that's pretty tied between three. But I'm going to choose one of them because I don't want to talk about all three of them. But I would say that the other two that it could have been Gris Dior by Christian Dior and also Ambre Nuit. I bought both of those in May. I went a bit Dior crazy in May. And yeah, I ended up buying both of them and really enjoying both of them. But the one that I'm going to talk about in this video is Lolita Lempicka by Lolita Lempicka. So this fragrance is the original 1990s vintage version of this fragrance. There's been so many different versions, I've lost track, but apparently the more modern version, the 2022 version, is supposed to be the closest to the older version, but I've not tried it, so I'm not quite sure. But this one I've been hunting for ages, and I finally found a vintage bottle of, and I'm so glad I bothered to try to find it because it is as lovely as people said it was. And it's just so interesting. This is not a boring fragrance. This is not just a, super sweet generic. This is really dark and it's got this sort of mysticism about it. So this is a cherry, a violet, but a kind of a smoky cherry violet. I think that's probably the licorice and the anise that's kind of making it a little bit smoky feeling almost. It's like if you imagine ink spreading on water, or if you imagine smoke in a misty air, there's a darkness to it. and it's got a bit of a texture as well, like that sort of darkness spreading around it. And the muskiness in the base of this fragrance also contributes to that darkness spreading around you. It becomes a very much darker fragrance in the middle of the fragrance, and then it becomes a little bit lighter again and more powdery and more innocent almost. I really like this fragrance. I think it's just incredibly interesting. I love the bottle too. I think it's just stunning, and I was really pleased to find this vintage bottle. So yeah, Lolita Lempicka was my most worn fragrance in May. So in June in the UK, the weather was glorious, and really that was our summer. I think it all went downhill from there, but I remember June being absolutely stunning. And the fragrance that I was reaching for most, again, was one from the Christian Dior line, the Privé line. And I got really obsessed with this line this year, and I ended up buying 4 in total. And one of the ones that I bought in June turned out to be my most worn fragrance in June. And I'm not surprised, because I really did obsess over this one. And this one's Jasmin des Anges. So this is a light, clean, sweet jasmine fragrance overall, but it also has a fruitiness, and the fruitiness is something that's like maybe even an apricot or something like that, definitely a stone fruit kind of fruitiness, but it's not like a powdery peach or anything off-putting, anything that I don't like in fragrance. This is definitely more on the fresher side of fruity. And also, this is quite a sweet fragrance. So this is something that I think of as something that maybe could have some honeysuckle in it or something like that. It also, as it dries down, is very, very musky. And the muskiness is very light and airy. But it's just a very elegant feeling, very pretty fragrance. It makes me think of wearing cotton summer dresses outside. It's that kind of really pretty fragrance, basically. If you ever want to just, be reminded of sunshine and warmth, this is a great fragrance. This is quite a light fragrance though. This is definitely on the summery side of the fragrance scale. This is not your taupe colour or, a super strong one like that from this line. This is definitely on the lighter area side. So if that bothers you, then maybe don't go for this one. But I just really love this fragrance. I think it's just so beautiful. So that's Jasmin des Anges by Maison Christian Dior. So in July, I'd won a couple of decants in a competition, and this is a fragrance that I'd never heard of before. I didn't know anything about the brand, never heard of the brand before. This is Francesca Dell'Oro Fleurdenya, and this is a really strong fragrance. You don't need many sprays. It's also something that's really long lasting, and it's one of those summery, sunny, floral kind of fragrances, a yellow and white floral fragrance. It almost has a little bit of a fruitiness to it. I don't think there are any fruits in this. I'm not sure, I haven't checked. But I think it's more the florals that are giving that slight fruity edge to it. As this dries down, it becomes richer, creamier. I think it's got quite a resinous base in it. And it's just something that makes me think of tanned brown skin and holidays. Whenever I go on holiday, I always take a fragrance like this. I really like this kind of sun creamy, sun tanned vibe in fragrances in the summer. And this is one that doesn't have any coconut, so that's a win-win for me, because coconut to me can come off sometimes as smelling a little bit like a shampoo or something quite cheap. But I think this fragrance really made me interested in Guerlain's Terracotta again, which is a fragrance that does have coconut, but it's very subtle. And actually wearing this one for a while made me realise that I probably did want a bottle of Terracotta, and I ended up buying Terracotta as well. I think if you like fragrances like Bain de Midi by Maison Matine, if you like fragrances like Sana Jardin, Révolution de Fleurs, or everything like that, maybe even Chanel Beige, you'll like Fleurdenya by Francesca Dell'Oro. So yeah, definitely worth trying this one. So yep, that's my most worn fragrance in July. So my most worn fragrance in August was one that I bought at the end of July to celebrate having an entire month off work. And I thought, I'll get a new fragrance, I'll take it on holiday. And now this fragrance is forever associated with me breaking my ankle, because this is the fragrance that I was wearing at the time, but I still love it. So it doesn't matter. I'm just going to have that association and get over it. So this is Drop to Issei by Issey Miyake. So this fragrance is just a really beautiful lilac fragrance, and lilac is a really underused note in designer perfumery. It's really rarely used these days, and I guess lilac to some people can smell very old-fashioned, But I think in the Drop It Say fragrance, they've used it in a very modern way because it's a very clean kind of smelling fragrance, a very watery smelling fragrance. And it's something that you sort of would wear straight out of a shower, really. I think this one is really good for the summer because it is so fresh. And the thing I really like about it as well is it has anise at the beginning, and that just gives it a little bit of an extra cool freshness, really. But overall, this is very much a fragrance that could be something like a body cream. It definitely has a solar edge to it as well. It's almost verging on a sun cream kind of smell, but it's much more gentle than that. It's more like a very watery sun cream, or more like a rich body cream, really. I just think this one is really a beautiful summery fragrance, and I'm really pleased I bought it despite the association with breaking my ankle. And yeah, I'm going to really enjoy it again come springtime. So that's Dropped It Say by Issey Miyake. So in September I was back to work with my broken ankle, and I had just bought this fragrance in a bundle with another one, and I'd been wanting it for ages, and I just ticked it off my wish list, and I was so happy to finally have it. And I was really worried about how often I'd wear it, but clearly I was wearing it quite often in September because it was my most worn fragrance. And this is Coco by Chanel. So this fragrance, there's no way I would have even considered buying this a couple of years ago. I really feel like either it's because I'm aging, or it's because I'm trying more fragrances, and therefore I know exactly, I can accept the Chanel DNA, and I know that I like it now. But I know that at one point I had such a negative reaction to anything that came from Chanel. I just wasn't interested. I just had this assumption that I would immediately hate it. But Coco is a fragrance that I cannot get enough of. I don't know what it is. It smells like the 80s. It literally does. So this is quite a leathery fragrance in a way, but it also has a little bit of an animalic kind of look to it. And I'm sure that's much less than it used to be. And also the cloves are probably much less than it used to be. But I used to absolutely hate cloves in fragrances, and now I have quite a few fragrances with cloves in, and I quite enjoy that noted fragrance now. I think it was Musk Ravageur that did it for me with cloves. But yeah, this one has obviously a lot of florals as well. It has ylang ylang, it has rose, jasmine. I think really the ylang ylang is quite prominent at the beginning, and the rose becomes more prominent in the dry down. But yeah, the jasmine's there throughout. I've been wearing this one to work a lot. I think really the thing I like about this is the dry down, the powderiness in the dry down, along with all those florals and that slight leatheriness. So that's Coco by Chanel. So in October, I came back to a fragrance that I bought back in 2021. And I think that's always a good sign, isn't it? When you come back to something and you still love it after a couple of years, after you've smelt loads more fragrances, and you come back to something and you think, yeah, that's still an excellent fragrance. And that's exactly the case with this one. And I think this fragrance is something that not everybody loves. So this is Gucci Guilty Absolute Pour Femme. So this fragrance is a very fruity fragrance, very heavy on a dark blackberry. It's got a dry rose, it's got a pepperiness about it. The rose is definitely something that's getting towards something sort of slightly gothic smelling. It's definitely got a darkness to it. The colour of the bottle really nicely reflects how this smells, actually. I think this one has also been compared to Amethyst by Lalique. I can see that comparison as well, but I do think this one is a little bit darker than Amethyst. This fragrance, I'm always surprised how it was actually marketed to women. I don't understand why Gucci did that, because I think it would have been probably more successful as a unisex fragrance, because I think this is the kind of fragrance that appeals very universally, with no kind of biases in gender or whatever. I just can't see why they didn't do that. I think it would have been a winner for them. This one also I've heard people describe as smelling a little bit niche, and I get that because it's a bit different for a designer fragrance. But yeah, it's just one that I always think of around Halloween, and I think that's why I picked it up again in October. It always makes me think of sort of fairy tales, dark fairy tales in the woods. So yeah, a perfect fragrance for around Halloween. So that's Gucci Guilty Absolute Pour Femme. So in November, I was reaching for a fragrance that I'd kind of forgotten about in my collection. I just kind of pushed it to the back, and I hadn't worn it for ages, and I picked it up because it was the kind of season that this fragrance should be worn in, and I was wowed by it. I couldn't put it down for a week. And this fragrance is L'Extase Rose Absolue by Nina Ricci. So I first bought this fragrance back in November 2020, and I remember putting this in one of my first videos, and it was just something that I didn't not like it. I definitely liked it, but I didn't appreciate how good it was for the price it was, because I hadn't tried loads of designer fragrances and realised just how much rubbish is out there. This one is just such a striking, such a different kind of fragrance. And I think the thing that makes it different is the Taif Rose. And I guess Taif Rose is something that's used a lot in Middle Eastern fragrances, but it wasn't something at the time that I'd smelt very much of. And it just gives this fragrance a very uplifting, very light, very bright, very almost fizzy feeling, really. And I guess there might be some pink pepper here, I'm not too sure. But it definitely has a little bit of a fizziness about it, this fragrance. It also is just really sweet. It has a beautiful resinous base that gives it a little bit of sweet. It's not overwhelmingly sweet, but it definitely has sweetness. And this is just a really long-lasting fragrance as well, and you get loads of compliments because it's quite strong. People can smell it. It's nice and sweet. People like that. So yeah, this one is just a stunner, and I think, you know, it's such a shame that this has been discontinued and it's no longer available, because for whatever it was, £35, this was an absolute bargain, and I'll be so sad when this is gone. I mean, I've got loads left, so I'm not going to run out anytime soon. But wow, this is just so good, and I'd completely forgotten about it, and I feel really cross with myself for just pushing this to the back of my collection, because it's wow. So that's Nina Ricci L'Extase Rose Absolue. So my most worn fragrance in December was one that I'd bought in early November, and this is a fragrance that had been on my wish list for ages, and I've been watching for a good deal, and I finally found one. And this fragrance I ended up wearing to my work Christmas do, and then I just couldn't put it down. I just wore it a lot in December, and I wore it a lot around Christmas as well. This is Givenchy L'Interdit Rouge. So this fragrance is a spicy tuberose fragrance, but with a very nice smoothness. There's sandalwood in the base of the fragrance, and also a load of vanilla. Really, when this is dried down on paper after a few days, all you smell is the vanilla. So I think this fragrance is just a really interesting vanilla fragrance. I'm not a massive fan of vanilla fragrances. I just get a little bit bored by them because there are just so many about, but I think this is definitely one of the more interesting vanilla fragrances that I've tried, and one of the more interesting vanilla fragrances that I own as well. I just think this one is just really sexy. It's really nice for a night out. It's just sophisticated, but it is also approachable, and I just think it's quite a gentle one. It's not super strong. I think if you want it stronger, you have to really overspray this because it does fade, but it is really long lasting, even if it is close to skin. So that's Givenchy L'Interdit Rouge. So that's the final fragrance in this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, then please press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know, which fragrance did you reach for most in 2023, and which one will you be reaching for most in 2024? And also, is there anything that you think that I should be checking out that I haven't already discovered? I'd love to know, so please let me know down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.